I never thought I'd have to choose between my only sister's wedding and a garden party, but my mother-in-law, Barbara, made sure to put me in that impossible position. Looking back, I should have seen the signs when she suddenly became overly interested in my schedule for June the 15th. Oh, that's perfect for my annual garden party, Barbara had exclaimed during Sunday dinner 3 months ago. This year will be extra special. The mayor's wife confirmed she's attending. I felt my stomach drop. Barbara, that's Emily's wedding day. I'm the maid of honor, remember? I told you about this last party. Her perfectly penciled eyebrows furrowed. Surely your sister can understand that family obligations come first. My sister is family, I replied, feeling my husband David tense beside me. Barbara's laugh could have frozen hell itself. Dear, I meant real family. The Matthews family has hosted this garden party for 30 years. Every important person in town attends. I've been married to David for 2 years, and in that time, I'd learned that Barbara Matthews considered herself town royalty. Her garden parties were legendary, but more for the drama they caused than for the overpriced finger sandwiches she served. Mom, David started, but Barbara cut him off with a wave of her manicured hand. David, sweetheart, explain to your wife how important this is. The Matthews name carries weight in this town. We can't have people thinking we're being snubbed for some basic wedding. I felt my cheeks burn. Emily had been planning her wedding for a year. She'd been my rock through everything, including Barbara's constant attempts to undermine me. I'm going to my sister's wedding, I stated firmly, standing up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need some air. That was just the beginning. Over the next 2 months, Barbara launched what I can only describe as psychological warfare. First came the daily calls, then the guilt-tripping texts. She told everyone who would listen that I was tearing the family apart. Think of David's position at his father's firm, she'd whisper during forced family dinners. The connections he could make at the garden party. But no, you're choosing to hurt his career. David tried to stand up to her, but years of conditioning ran deep. Maybe you could stop by both, he suggested one night, earning himself a night on the couch. The threats started 3 weeks before the wedding. At first, they were subtle. It would be a shame if David's promotion got delayed. I heard the country club has a very long waiting list. You know, I have quite a few friends on the hospital board where you work. But as the day drew closer, Barbara became more desperate. The texts turned into explicit threats, each one carefully worded to maintain plausible deniability while making her intentions crystal clear. Yesterday was the final straw. I was at Emily's wedding rehearsal, helping her with her veil, when Barbara showed up uninvited. She cornered me in the church bathroom, her designer perfume suffocating in the small space. "This is your last chance," she hissed, all pretense of civility gone. "The garden party starts at 2 p.m. Be there, or I'll make sure you regret choosing that sister of yours over your real family." I've been recording our conversations for weeks, a habit I developed after her first veiled threat. My hand shook as I pressed stop on my phone's recording app. "Barbara," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I have spent 2 years trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I've attended your charity lunches, joined your book club, and even took up golf because you said it was what Matthews women do. But this is where I draw the line." She stepped closer, her expensive pearls clicking together. "You ungrateful little." The bathroom door swung open and Emily walked in. She took one look at my face and Barbara's stance and understood immediately. "Is everything okay here?" My sister's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Barbara's mask slipped back into place. "Just having a little chat with my daughter-in-law about family priorities." As she clicked her way out of the bathroom, Emily grabbed my hands. "What did that witch say to you?" I showed her my phone and played the recordings. Emily's face went from concern to fury to something I'd never seen before. Determination. "Oh hell no," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "I think it's time everyone saw the real Barbara Matthews." And that's how, standing in the church bathroom with my sister on her wedding eve, we hatched a plan that would either fix everything or burn my marriage to the ground. "Are you sure?" I asked Emily. "This is your wedding we're talking about." She squeezed my hand. "You've been dealing with her abuse for 2 years. Tomorrow isn't just my wedding. It's going to be the day you finally stand up to her." I looked at my phone, at the dozens of threatening texts and recordings. "David needs to see who his mother really is," Emily finished. "Now let's go finish this rehearsal." We have a big day tomorrow. As I followed my sister out of the bathroom, I felt lighter than I had in months. Barbara stood with the family, pretending to admire the flower arrangements while shooting daggers at me with her eyes. She had no idea that in less than 24 hours, her carefully crafted image would shatter, like the teacup she threw at me last party when I dared suggest hosting holiday dinner at my house. Tomorrow, at my sister's wedding, Barbara Matthews would learn that some things are more important than garden parties and social status. And I had the receipts to prove it. I caught David's eye across the church. He smiled uncertainly, caught, as always, between his wife and his mother. By this time tomorrow, he'd have to make a choice. I just hoped he'd make the right one. Emily squeezed my hand once more before taking her place at the altar for the rehearsal. Ready for tomorrow? I nodded, feeling the weight of my phone in my pocket. More than ready. The morning of Emily's wedding dawned bright and clear, a perfect June day for both a wedding and, as Barbara kept reminding everyone, a garden party. I woke up to 17 new text messages, each more threatening than the last. Final warning. The mayor's wife specifically asked if you'd be there. Think carefully about your future in this town. David's father is very disappointed in your choices. David was already up, pacing our bedroom with his phone pressed to his ear. Mom, please. No, I understand tradition, but... Mom, Sarah's sister is getting married. I watched him crumble under his mother's manipulation, the familiar signs of defeat creeping across his face. When he hung up, he looked at me with pleading eyes. Sarah, maybe we could. Don't, I cut him off, pulling out my bridesmaid dress. Just don't. The getting ready room at the church was buzzing with activity. Emily looked radiant in her wedding dress, but her eyes narrowed when she saw my expression. She's still at it, isn't she? I handed her my phone. While the makeup artist worked on her face, Emily scrolled through the morning's threats. Her hands tightened around my phone when she reached Barbara's latest message. Hope you enjoy being a bridesmaid because after today, you'll never be welcome at another social event in this town. Okay, that's it, Emily declared, standing up so suddenly the makeup artist jumped. Julie, get my laptop from my bag. Sarah, forward me those texts. It's time for Plan B. Julie, my fellow bridesmaid and it wizard, grinned as she pulled out Emily's laptop. Within minutes, she had it connected to the reception hall's AV system. All set, Julie announced. Just say the word and Operation Expose Barbara goes live. I hesitated. Maybe we should wait. The door burst open and Barbara swept in like a hurricane in designer clothes. Sarah, the garden party starts in 4 hours. I've saved you a place at the head table. Emily stepped between us, still in her wedding dress. Barbara, get out of my dressing room. Emily dear, Barbara's smile was acidic. I realize you're upset, but surely you understand that the Matthews family has obligations. The only obligation, Emily's voice could have cut diamonds, is your son's obligation to support his wife. Now get out before I have security remove you. Barbara's face contorted. How dare you? Sarah, if you don't come to this party, I swear I'll. You'll what? I interrupted, pulling out my phone. Make more threats? Call the hospital board? Tell everyone I'm an unfit wife? I pressed play, and Barbara's own voice filled the room. Either you attend this party, or I'll make sure David's father reconsiders his position at the firm. The color drained from Barbara's face. You recorded me? That's illegal. Actually, Julie piped up. New York is a one-party consent state. Totally legal. Barbara turned to leave, but I wasn't done. I have 2 years of your threats, Barbara. 2 years of text messages, voicemails, and recordings. Would you like everyone at the reception to hear how you really treat your daughter-in-law? You wouldn't dare, she hissed. Think of what this would do to David. I am thinking of David, I replied. I'm thinking it's time he saw who his mother really is. The door opened again and David appeared. Mom? Sarah? What's going on? Barbara immediately switched to victim mode. Oh, David, your wife is threatening me. On Emily's special day, no less. I looked at my husband, the man I loved who had never fully stood up to his mother. David, I need you to listen to something. Before Barbara could protest, I played another recording, the one from the church bathroom yesterday. David's face cycled through disbelief, hurt, and realization as he heard his mother's threats, her manipulation, her cruelty. Mom, his voice was small, almost childlike. Is this real? Of course not, Barbara scoffed. She obviously doctored those recordings. I have the originals, Julie offered. Timestamps, metadata, everything. Want to see? David walked over to me, took my phone, and began scrolling through the texts. With each swipe, his face grew darker. All this time, he muttered. All those excuses you made for missing family events, you were protecting me from this? I touched his arm gently. I didn't want you to have to choose. But Mom forced that choice anyway. He looked up at Barbara. Didn't you? Just like you always do. Barbara must have sensed she was losing control because she played her final card. If she goes through with this, if she chooses that wedding over our family tradition, there will be consequences. The room fell silent. Emily's makeup artist and Julie froze. Even Emily held her breath. David straightened his shoulders. No, Mom. The only consequences will be the ones you face if you don't leave right now. David. Go to your garden party, Mom. Sarah and I will be at my sister-in-law's wedding. And tomorrow, you and I are going to have a very long conversation about boundaries. Barbara looked around the room, searching for an ally, and found none. Her perfectly composed facade cracked just slightly. This isn't over, she announced, heading for the door. Actually, I called after her. It is. And Barbara? Those threats about David's job. I sent copies to father-in-law last night. He'd like to meet with you after the garden party. The door slammed so hard it shook the wedding photos on the wall. Emily broke the tension with a laugh. Well, that was better than any pre-wedding entertainment I could have planned. David pulled me into a hug. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have seen it sooner. We'll talk about it later, I promised. Right now, we have a wedding to attend. As the makeup artist resumed work on Emily's face, Julie disconnected her laptop with a slightly disappointed sigh. So we're not doing the public exposure at the reception. Emily caught my eye in the mirror. Keep it ready, just in case. Something tells me Barbara might not be done yet. Looking at my phone, which had finally stopped buzzing with threats, I couldn't help but agree. Barbara Matthews had never handled public humiliation well, and she just suffered a major defeat in front of witnesses. The next few hours would reveal whether she actually learned her lesson, or if she was planning something bigger for the reception. David squeezed my hand. Whatever she tries next, we'll handle it together. I should have known Barbara wouldn't go quietly into her garden party defeat. The wedding ceremony was beautiful, but throughout the service, I kept catching glimpses of her slipping in and out of the church, furiously typing on her phone. During Emily's vows, my phone started buzzing with messages from family friends and colleagues. Barbara had apparently spent the last hour calling and texting everyone in her social circle, spinning a tale about how I was mentally unstable and had fabricated evidence to slander her good name. As we lined up for the reception entrance, David's phone rang. It was his father. Dad says Mom's having some kind of meltdown at the garden party, he whispered. She's telling everyone you doctored those recordings and that you're trying to destroy the Matthews family name. I looked at Emily, who was practically glowing with newlywed happiness. I won't let her ruin your reception. Oh, honey, Emily smiled wickedly. I think it's time for Plan B after all. She nodded to Julie, who pulled out her laptop with alarming speed. The reception began normally enough. Speeches were given, champagne was poured, and the first dances went off without a hitch. Then, just as dinner was being served, Barbara made her grand entrance. She swept into the reception hall, still wearing her garden party outfit, trailing several of her society friends behind her like a backup chorus. I demand to be heard, she announced, clicking her way to the center of the room. My daughter-in-law has been spreading vicious lies. The room fell silent. Emily's new husband reached for her hand, but my sister was already smiling. She gave Julie a small nod. Suddenly, the reception hall screens flickered to life. Barbara's own voice filled the room. Either you attend this party, or I'll make sure David's father reconsiders his position at the firm. Text messages appeared on the screens, time-stamped and authenticated. Voicemails played one after another, each revealing Barbara's true nature. The final recording was from just hours earlier, her voice screeching threats in the church bathroom. Barbara stood frozen as her carefully crafted public image crumbled around her. Her society friends began backing away, smartphones raised to capture her humiliation. That's enough, David's father's voice cut through the chaos. He had arrived just in time to witness his wife's exposure. Barbara, we're leaving. Now. But Barbara wasn't finished. She turned to David, tears streaming down her face. Choose. Choose right now, your mother or her. The room held its breath. David looked at me, then at his mother, and finally at the screen still displaying her threats. I already chose Mom 2 years ago when I married Sarah. I just wish I'd been brave enough to stand up to you sooner. Barbara's face crumpled. Without another word, she allowed her husband to lead her from the reception hall, leaving behind only the echo of her designer heels and the whispers of shocked guests. Later that night, as Emily and her new husband shared their last dance, David pulled me aside. I got a text from Dad, he said. He's taking Mom to counseling. Apparently, this isn't the first time she's done something like this. There were others before you, my high school girlfriends, my college roommates, anyone she saw as a threat to her control. I leaned into his embrace. What happens now? Now, he smiled, we live our lives without walking on eggshells. And if Mom ever wants to be part of that life again, she'll have to earn it, on our terms. Emily appeared beside us, radiant in her wedding dress. Best wedding ever, right? I mean, how many brides can say they took down an evil mother-in-law while saying I do? We all laughed, and for the first time in 2 years, it felt genuine. As we watched the last dancers twirl across the floor, I deleted Barbara's number from my phone. Whatever came next, reconciliation or permanent distance, would be on our terms, not hers. Sometimes the happiest endings don't come from keeping the peace, but from finally having the courage to stand up and say enough. And as I looked around at my real family, my sister, my husband, and the friends who stood by us, I knew we'd made the right choice. After all, some things are more important than garden parties. Remember, not a word about the recordings, I whispered to Sarah as we pulled into Eleanor's circular driveway. My daughter nodded solemnly, adjusting the bow in her hair, the one with the tiny microphone hidden inside. 6 months after my husband Mark's death, his mother Eleanor had become a different person. The warm, loving grandmother who'd always treated my 3 children as the center of her universe had transformed into someone cold and distant. At first, I'd attributed it to grief. Now I wasn't so sure. Mommy, do we have to go to Sunday dinner? Tommy, my 8-year-old, asked from the back seat. Grandma doesn't even hug us anymore. My heart clenched. Yes, sweetheart, family traditions are important. What I didn't say was that these Sunday dinners were now our only chance to understand what was happening to their $4.2 million inheritance. Last week, Eleanor's lawyer had called to inform me that the will had been changed. My children, Mark's children, had been completely cut out. The estate will be divided among the natural grandchildren, he'd said, his voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. Mrs. Walker feels the family fortune should stay with blood relatives. The natural grandchildren meant only Melissa's kids. Mark's sister had moved back home 3 months ago, supposedly to help their mother after Mark's death. Since then, everything had changed. Sarah caught my eye in the rearview mirror and tapped her bow twice, our signal that the recording had started. At 12, she was already showing signs of being as analytical as her father. When the changes in Eleanor began, Sarah had started her family history project, secretly recording every interaction. For posterity, she'd said, I'd seen the worry in her eyes. She'd noticed the changes in her grandmother before any of us. Eleanor's housekeeper, Maria, opened the door. Her eyes held a warning as she ushered us inside. Mrs. Walker is in the conservatory with Ms. Melissa and the lawyers. Lawyers? On a Sunday. Grandma. Jenny, my 5-year-old, ran ahead, still young enough to hope for the warm welcomes of the past. We found Eleanor sitting rigidly in her favorite chair, Melissa hovering beside her like a guard dog. 2 men in suits stood near the windows, documents spread across the antique coffee table. Oh, Melissa's smile was acid sweet. We didn't expect you so early. It's 5 o'clock, I said evenly, same as every Sunday for the past 10 years. Eleanor looked up, confusion clouding her face. Mark? Is that you? My children froze. Sarah's hand flew to her bow. No, Mother, Melissa said sharply. That's Jessica, Mark's widow. Remember? We discussed this. Eleanor's face hardened instantly, the confusion replaced by an unnatural coldness. Of course, the children's mother. Tommy pressed against my leg. Mommy, why don't you kids go help Maria in the kitchen? I suggested, keeping my voice light. I'm sure she has cookies. Sarah lingered, adjusting her bow again. Smart girl. Actually, Melissa interjected, we're discussing family business. Perhaps you should all come back another time. Family business? I stepped further into the room. Involving my children's inheritance? One of the lawyers cleared his throat. Mrs. Walker is merely finalizing some changes to her estate planning. As a non-blood relative, you don't have standing toe. I have standing as the mother of her grandchildren. I cut in. The ones she promised to provide for in her, well, just 2 months ago. Plans change, Melissa said smoothly. Mother has realized the importance of keeping the family legacy intact. Eleanor nodded, but her eyes were distant. The fortune must stay with real family. We are real family. The words burst from Sarah, who hadn't left despite my suggestion. Grandma, don't you remember? Last Christmas you said we were your greatest treasures. You said Dad made you prouder than anything by giving you us as grandchildren. For a moment, something flickered in Eleanor's eyes. Recognition, warmth, confusion. Then Melissa touched her shoulder and it vanished. That was before Eleanor said flatly, things are different now. Different how? Sarah pressed, her hand steady on her bow. Different since Dad died, or different since Aunt Melissa moved in? Sarah, I warned, but my clever daughter wasn't finished. Different since you started taking those new pills Aunt Melissa gives you? The ones Maria says make you confused? The room went deadly quiet. Melissa's face turned pale, then red. Mother, she said quickly, you're getting upset. Remember what the doctor said about stress. What doctor? I demanded. Eleanor's physician retired months ago. I've been trying to schedule a new appointment, but you keep saying she's too busy. The lawyers exchanged glances. One began gathering his papers. Perhaps we should continue this another time, he suggested. No, Melissa snapped. Mother knows exactly what she's doing. Tell them, Mother. Eleanor blinked rapidly. The fortune must stay with real family. We are real family, Sarah said again, softer now. She approached her grandmother's chair, ignoring Melissa's attempt to intercept her. Grandma, look at me, really look. Eleanor's eyes focused on Sarah's face. For a moment she looked like herself again. Mark's eyes, she whispered. You have your father's eyes. Yes, Sarah knelt beside the chair. And Tommy has your smile, and Jenny has your hair. We're your grandchildren, and you love us. Don't listen to their manipulation, Mother, Melissa interrupted. Remember what we discussed about gold diggers. But Eleanor was staring at Sarah's bow. I gave you that bow. Last Christmas. With a matching one for Jenny because you both love butterflies. That's right, Sarah smiled, tears in her eyes. And you told us about how you and Grandpa raised monarchs in this very conservatory. Remember? You said it was a family tradition. Enough. Melissa grabbed Sarah's arm. Mother needs her rest. Everyone out. Take your hands off my daughter. My voice could have frozen hell. The lawyer by the window pulled out his phone. Ms. Walker, given these concerning allegations about medication and possible cognitive issues, I cannot in good conscience proceed with these changes until Mrs. Walker has been properly evaluated. She has been evaluated. Melissa's voice rose. I have documentation. From what doctor? I challenged, because I have records of every legitimate medical visit for the past decade, and there haven't been any since Mark died. Eleanor was looking between us all, confusion and distress evident on her face. Mark? Where's Mark? I think, the lawyer said firmly, we need to schedule an immediate medical and cognitive evaluation, and perhaps discuss the possibility of a temporary conservatorship. Melissa's face contorted. You can't. Actually, Sarah spoke up, her hand still on her bow. I think there's something you should all hear first. My brilliant prepared daughter reached into her pocket and pulled out a small speaker. It was time to play back some very interesting Sunday dinner conversations. Sarah's hands were steady as she connected her phone to the speaker. Melissa lunged forward, but the lawyer stepped between them. I believe we should hear what the young lady has to say, he said firmly. Given the circumstances, any evidence regarding Mrs. Walker's state of mind is relevant. Evidence? Melissa laughed, but there was an edge of hysteria to it. She's a child playing games. I'm a child who knows how to press record, Sarah corrected, her father's determination written across her face. She pressed play. Eleanor's voice filled the conservatory, clear and strong, from just 3 months ago. Melissa, I don't want those pills. They make everything foggy. Mother, they're for your anxiety. Dr. Freeman prescribed them. Dr. Freeman? I don't know any Dr. Freeman. Yes, you do. We discussed this. Now take your medicine. The recording continued, revealing a pattern. Every Sunday dinner for the past 3 months. Melissa insisting on medication, Eleanor growing increasingly confused, conversations about changing the will. Then came the recording from 2 weeks ago. The fortune must stay with real family, Eleanor's voice recited, mechanical and dull. That's right, Mother. Now sign here. But Mark's children are not your real grandchildren, remember? We discussed this. That woman trapped Mark into marriage. She's after your money. Jessica trapped Mark. Yes, and now she's using the children to steal your fortune. Sign the papers, Mother. Protect your real family. The lawyer held up his hand, stopping the playback. His face was thunderous. Ms. Walker, are you attempting to manipulate your mother into changing her will while she's under the influence of unauthorized medication? These recordings are fake, Melissa sputtered. She's obviously doctored them. Actually, Sarah said, pulling out a notebook, I kept a log of every pill, every conversation, and every time Grandma didn't recognize us. I also took pictures of the pill bottles, the ones with no pharmacy label or doctor's name. I watched my daughter, my brilliant, methodical daughter, lay out 3 months of evidence like a seasoned prosecutor. The second lawyer was already on his phone, speaking quietly but urgently to someone. Maria, Melissa shouted, get in here and tell them I'm taking care of Mother. The housekeeper appeared in the doorway, wringing her hands. I cannot lie, Miss Melissa. Not anymore. Not after seeing what those pills do to Mrs. Walker. Eleanor was watching the scene unfold, her eyes clearing slightly as the afternoon's medication wore off. Jessica, she called softly. Where are my grandchildren? We're here, Grandma. Sarah moved to her side, taking her hand. Tommy, Jenny, come here. My younger two crept in from where they'd been listening at the door. Eleanor's face softened as she saw them, real recognition flooding back. My treasures, she whispered. Why did I? What's happening to me? Nothing that can't be fixed, I assured her, glaring at Melissa. Once we get you proper medical care. The lawyer who'd been on the phone cleared his throat. I've contacted Adult Protective Services and Mrs. Walker's former physician. They're on their way. Ms. Walker, I strongly suggest you remain here until they arrive. Melissa's composure finally cracked. You don't understand. She was giving everything to that woman's brats. Our family fortune, our legacy, all going to some gold digger's children just because my foolish brother couldn't see through her tricks. Tricks. Eleanor's voice was stronger now, angry. Mark loved Jessica from the moment they met. He said she made him want to be a better man. She looked around, confusion giving way to clarity. Where is Mark? Why isn't he here? The room went silent. Sarah squeezed her grandmother's hand. Daddy died, Grandma, she said gently. 6 months ago, remember? And then Aunt Melissa moved in to help you. Eleanor's face crumpled. Mark is. Oh God. My boy, my precious boy. She began to sob, deep, racking cries that shook her whole body. How could I forget? How could I forget my son? Because I've been drugging you, Melissa said coldly. Because you were going to give away our fortune to those half-breed brats and their common mother. Because Mark was always your favorite, even though I was the one who stayed close to home, the one who did everything right. Ms. Walker, the lawyer looked appalled. I strongly advise you to stop talking. But Melissa was beyond advice. Do you know what it's like? Watching my idiot brother marry beneath him, watching you welcome his little mongrels like they were royalty? That money was supposed to be mine. All of it. Mark didn't deserve it. He ran off to be an artist, for God's sake. He married a teacher. He married for love, Eleanor said quietly, her tears subsiding, like his father and I did. And he gave me 3 perfect grandchildren who have their grandfather's creativity and their father's heart. She straightened in her chair, looking more like herself than she had in months. Unlike you, Melissa, who only married for money and status. How is Charles, by the way? Still paying alimony to wives 1 through 3? Sarah's grip tightened on her grandmother's hand as Melissa lunged forward again, face contorted with rage. But before she could reach them, Maria appeared with two police officers. "Mrs. Eleanor Walker," one asked. "Adult Protective Services called us. They're on their way, but given the allegations of elder abuse and illegal administration of medication, we need to secure the scene." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Police collected Sarah's recordings and evidence. Paramedics arrived to evaluate Eleanor. APS interviewed everyone, including the children. Through it all, Eleanor kept hold of Sarah's hand, as if it anchored her to reality. "My clever girl," she said as things finally began to quiet down. "Just like your father, always watching, always noticing details." She touched the bow in Sarah's hair. "And creative with your solutions." Sarah smiled through her tears. "I knew something was wrong when you stopped telling us stories about Dad's childhood. You'd never forget those." "No," Eleanor agreed. "I wouldn't. Not willingly." She looked at me, her eyes clear and sad. "Jessica, can you ever forgive me? The things I said, weren't you?" I finished firmly. "We'll get through this together. As a family." The police were leading Melissa out in handcuffs. She'd been caught trying to flush pills down the bathroom toilet, pills that would be tested and traced back to their source. "What happens now?" Tommy asked, watching his aunt's departure with wide eyes. Eleanor pulled him close with her free arm. "Now, my darling boy, we make things right, starting with those terrible changes to my will." "Already voided," the first lawyer confirmed. "Given the clear evidence of coercion and diminished capacity, the previous will stand." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "I want a new will, one that makes it absolutely clear that my grandchildren, all of my grandchildren, are my greatest legacy, more precious than any fortune." Sarah adjusted her bow one last time, capturing her grandmother's words. Not as evidence this time, but as a testament to love being stronger than greed, and family being about more than blood. Just as her father had always believed. The courtroom was silent as the last recording played through the speakers. Eleanor's confused voice asking for Mark mixed with Melissa's harsh commands and the unmistakable sound of pills being forced on her mother. "She's just confused," Melissa had said on the tape. "Take these, Mother. They'll help you remember who really loves you." Judge Harrison removed her glasses, fixing Melissa with a stern gaze. "Ms. Walker, would you care to explain why you were administering unmarked medication to your mother without medical authorization?" Melissa's expensive lawyer shifted uncomfortably. They'd fought hard to keep Sarah's recordings out of evidence, claiming they were obtained illegally. But the judge had ruled that a minor recording in her own grandmother's home during regular family visits showed no expectation of privacy. "Your Honor," Melissa began, but the judge held up her hand. "Save it for your criminal trial." She turned to review the medical reports. "Based on the evidence presented, including Dr. Patterson's comprehensive evaluation, I find clear and convincing evidence of elder abuse and financial exploitation." I squeezed Sarah's hand as she sat beside me, still wearing her signature bow, though now without its hidden microphone. On my other side, Tommy and Jenny watched with solemn faces, understanding that something important was happening, even if they didn't grasp all the details. "The temporary conservatorship will become permanent," Judge Harrison continued. "Mrs. Eleanor Walker's medical and financial decisions will be managed by the court-appointed conservator, with regular oversight from her original estate planning team." Eleanor sat in her wheelchair near the front, looking more like herself than she had in months. 3 weeks without Melissa's medication had restored much of her clarity, though the doctors said some damage might be permanent. Furthermore, the judge added, "The attempted changes to Mrs. Walker's will are hereby invalidated. The original estate plan, designating equal shares to all grandchildren, will remain in effect." Melissa stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Those children aren't even blood relatives anymore. Their father is dead." "Ms. Walker." Judge Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. "One more outburst, and I'll have you removed. And given the pending criminal charges against you, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully." Eleanor turned in her wheelchair, her eyes finding Sarah in the gallery. "My butterfly girl," she said clearly, using her old nickname for my daughter. "You saved me." Sarah slipped from her seat and went to her grandmother, kneeling beside the wheelchair. "I just helped you remember who you are, Grandma. Who we all are." "The disease made everything foggy," Eleanor said, taking Sarah's hand. But your voice on those recordings, it was like a light in the dark. My brave girl, just like your father. Later, as we helped Eleanor settle back into her home, now staffed with court-approved caregivers, Maria brought out a familiar photo album. "Look what I found hidden in Ms. Melissa's room," she said, handing us the leather-bound book. It was Eleanor's precious family album, the one that had mysteriously disappeared during Melissa's reign. Inside were photos of Mark growing up, our wedding, each child's birth, every Christmas and birthday celebration. "She tried to erase us," Tommy said quietly, looking at a photo of himself as a baby in his grandmother's arms. "No one can erase family," Eleanor replied, suddenly sharp and clear. "Not with pills, not with lies, not with greed." She turned to Sarah. "You understood that, didn't you? That's why you started recording." Sarah nodded. "Dad always said that truth keeps people honest. I just helped the truth be heard." As we sat there, looking through photos and sharing memories, I watched my children with their grandmother. The real Eleanor, not the drugged and manipulated woman Melissa had created. Tommy showed her his latest school project. Jenny curled in her lap with a storybook, and Sarah sat nearby, quietly watchful as always. "Jessica," Eleanor called softly while the younger kids were distracted. "I need you to promise me something. Anything. The money, it was never about the money. Make sure they know that. Make sure they know it was about family." I took her hand, remembering all the Sunday dinners before Melissa's return, all the love she'd given my children. "They know, Eleanor." Sarah made sure we'd never forget. Eleanor smiled, touching the bow in Sarah's hair. "My butterfly girl," she whispered, "you brought the light back." And in that moment, surrounded by photos and memories and truth, we were whole again. Different without Mark, changed by what Melissa had done, but whole. Because Sarah had proven what Eleanor always said, family isn't about blood, it's about love. And love, like truth, finds a way to be heard. "Mom, can you help me set up my science fair project?" Emma called from the dining room, where she transformed our table into a makeshift computer lab. 3 monitors hummed, surrounded by tangles of cables and a stack of forensics textbooks she'd borrowed from the library. "Just a minute, honey." I was still staring at the bank statement in my hands, another overdraft notice. 6 months after Tom had lost our children's insurance money in what he claimed was a failed investment, we were barely staying afloat. The insurance payout had come after my parents' accident. They'd left everything to their grandchildren, including a hefty life insurance policy. The money was supposed to secure Emma and Jake's future, college, first homes, the dreams my parents had for them. Instead, Tom convinced me to let him invest it through his financial consulting firm. 3 months later, he left us for his assistant Veronica. A week after that, he claimed the investment had failed catastrophically. No paper trail, no recourse, nothing but apologies and promises to make it right someday. "Mom." Emma's voice pulled me back to the present. "I need to show you something weird." I tucked the overdraft notice into my pocket and joined her at the dining room table. At 12, Emma was already showing signs of being a technical prodigy. While other kids her age were building volcanoes with baking soda, my daughter had chosen digital forensics, uncovering data manipulation as her science fair topic. "Look at this," she said, pointing to one of her monitors. "Remember when Dad gave us those investment documents, the ones showing where he put the money?" My stomach clenched. "Emma, honey, we've talked about this. Sometimes investments just fail." "No, Mom, look." She pulled up 2 documents side by side. "This is Dad's statement showing the money transfer to Global Sustainable Ventures. And this," she clicked to another window, "is what I found when I ran it through my forensics program." I leaned closer, trying to make sense of the technical data on the screen. "See these metadata timestamps? They show when the document was created and modified. Dad's statement says the transfer happened in March, but the document wasn't created until June, 3 days before he told us everything was lost." My heart started pounding. "How did you get these?" "Dad still uses the same password for everything, my birthday." She rolled her eyes. "Plus, he never logged out of the family computer before he left. I found his whole document archive in the cloud backup." Emma, accessing someone's private files without permission is wrong? Like stealing your kid's insurance money? Her voice cracked slightly. "Mom, there's more. Remember Dad's new company, the one he started with Veronica?" Of course I remembered. New Horizon Energy Solutions, a sustainable energy startup that had recently secured major funding. Tom's face had been all over the local business news, praising him as an innovative entrepreneur. Emma pulled up another document. This is their company's financial filing from last month. Look at the initial investment amount. My blood ran cold. The number matched our children's insurance payout exactly. $847,692.33. That could be a coincidence, I whispered, but Emma was already shaking her head. I traced the money transfers. Dad moved our insurance money through 3 different shell companies before it landed in New Horizons accounts. He didn't lose anything, he stole it to start his company with Veronica. The room spun slightly. I gripped the back of Emma's chair for support. Honey, this is very serious. If what you're saying is true. It's true. She pulled up more documents, bank transfers, corporate filings, emails between Tom and Veronica dating back months before he left us. I have everything, Mom. All the proof. That's my real science project. I stared at my daughter's determined face, so much like my father's when he was solving a problem. Emma, what exactly is your project about? She straightened in her chair, suddenly looking older than her 12 years. My project shows how digital forensics can uncover financial fraud by tracking document manipulation and following money trails through shell companies. She managed a small smile. Using a real-world example, of course. And all of this is going to be on display at the science fair. The regional science fair, she corrected. The one being covered by local news, where Dad promised to be a guest judge because New Horizon is sponsoring the event. My mouth went dry. Emma, did you plan it this way? Yeah. She started gathering her printouts into a neat folder. Dad always said I was too smart for my home good. Guess he should have remembered that before he stole from us. I sank into a chair, my mind racing. The evidence was clear. Tom hadn't just stolen from us, he committed serious fraud. But if Emma presented this at the science fair, have you told your brother about this? She shook her head. Jake's only 10. He still thinks Dad's a hero. Her voice was bitter. Besides, he's got enough to deal with since we can't afford his hockey team fees anymore. The overdraft notice felt heavy in my pocket. We'd been struggling to maintain any semblance of our previous life, while Tom and Veronica were flying to sustainability conferences and buying lake houses with our money. Mom. Emma's voice was smaller now, more like the little girl who still slept with her stuffed penguin. Are you mad at me? I pulled her into a tight hug. No, baby, I'm proud of you. But we need to be very careful with this information. I already made copies of everything, she said into my shoulder, and backed it up in 3 different places. Dad taught me about redundancy when he used to let me help with his work files. A plan was forming in my mind. The science fair is in 2 weeks? She nodded. And your father doesn't know what your project is about. He never asks about school stuff anymore. The hurt in her voice made my heart ache. I pulled back and looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Behind her purple-rimmed glasses was a strength I hadn't fully appreciated before. She'd found a way to fight back when I'd been too beaten down to even try. Okay, I said, straightening up. First, we're going to call my lawyer. Then, we're going to make this the best science fair project anyone's ever seen. Emma's face lit up. Really? You're not going to make me change it? Nope. Your father always said the best investments are the ones you research thoroughly. I picked up one of her forensics textbooks. Let's show him just how thorough his daughter can be. As Emma hugged me and rushed off to call her best friend about our secret mission, I looked at the evidence on her screens. In 2 weeks, Tom would walk into that science fair expecting to play the role of successful entrepreneur and devoted father. Instead, he'd find out that the daughter he'd underestimated had just become his worst nightmare. And I couldn't wait to see his face when he realized it. The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity. My lawyer, Sarah Chen, nearly dropped her coffee when Emma walked her through the evidence trail. Your daughter found all this? She kept asking, flipping through page after page of documented fraud. I used Dad's own methods against him, Emma explained, pulling up more files. He always said the best way to hide money was to make it look legitimate, so I just followed the legitimate paper trail. Sarah was already making calls. Within days, we had a meeting with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Agent Marcus Torres sat in our dining room, watching Emma demonstrate how she'd uncovered the fraud. Usually we're the ones teaching people about forensic accounting, he said, clearly impressed. Not learning from a seventh grader. Emma beamed. Does this mean you'll help us? Oh, we'll do more than help. Agent Torres looked at me. We've been investigating several suspicious startups in the sustainable energy sector. Your ex-husband's company just moved to the top of our list. But it was Emma's science fair project that truly showcased her genius. She transformed complex financial fraud into something her peers could understand, using a fictional company called Super Secret Snacks to demonstrate how people hide money through shell corporations. See, if someone steals cookie money, she explained during our practice run, they might hide it by creating fake companies like Chocolate Holdings and Sugar Solutions before finally using it to start their real company, Amazing Treats Incorporated. Her presentation board showed the money flow with actual cookies moving through clear tubes. And what happens when you follow the cookie trail? I asked, playing the role of science fair judge. Emma pressed a button, and UV light revealed hidden markings on the cookies. The truth comes out, just like it did with Dad's money. The morning of the science fair, I found Emma in the bathroom, throwing up. We can stop this, I said, holding her hair back. We don't have to. Yes, we do. She wiped her mouth, steel in her eyes. Dad always said courage means doing the right thing even when you're scared. When did you get so grown up? She managed a weak smile. Probably around the time Dad told Jake he couldn't play hockey anymore because we couldn't afford it. The school gymnasium was packed when we arrived. Local news cameras roamed the aisles, interviewing students about their projects. And there, by the judges' table, stood Tom and Veronica, looking every bit the successful power couple in matching sustainable fabric suits. Ready? I squeezed Emma's hand. She squared her shoulders. Ready. We positioned her booth strategically, not too close to the entrance, but prominently placed where the judges couldn't miss it. The sign read, "Following the digital trail, how technology reveals financial secrets." I watched Tom working his way through the projects, playing the role of interested corporate sponsor perfectly. He was 3 booths away when Agent Torres arrived with his team, positioning themselves casually around the gym. 2 booths away, and Veronica was laughing at something another judge said. 1 booth away, and I saw the exact moment Tom read Emma's project title. He faltered mid-step. "Hello, Dad," Emma said clearly as he reached her booth. "Want to see how I followed the cookie trail?" I saw confusion flash across his face, followed by dawning horror as he took in the familiar-looking documents displayed on her laptop. "Emma, what is this?" His voice was tight. "It's my project on digital forensics." She began her presentation, voice steady. "I started by investigating how people can manipulate documents to hide financial fraud. Would you like to see my primary example?" Veronica appeared at Tom's elbow. "Tom, what's wrong?" "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just surprised by our daughter's choice of topic." "Oh, you'll be more surprised in a minute," Emma promised, clicking to her next slide. "See, I discovered that some people create fake documents to steal money. Like this one, showing a failed investment." She pulled up Tom's fraudulent statement, but when we examined the metadata, I saw Tom's face drain of color as Emma methodically laid out every step of his fraud. The other judges were leaning in, fascinated by her technical expertise. The news cameras had drifted over. "Emma, stop this right now," Tom hissed. "Stop what, Dad?" "Showing how I traced $847,692.33 through 3 shell companies into New Horizon Energy Startup Fund." Her voice carried clearly. "That's the best part of my project." Veronica grabbed Tom's arm. "We need to leave. Now." "I'm afraid that's not possible." Agent Torres stepped forward, badge out. "Mr. Anderson, Ms. Reed, we have some questions about New Horizons' initial funding." What followed was chaos. Tom tried to run but was stopped by 2 FBI agents near the fire exit. Veronica began crying, claiming she knew nothing about the stolen money. News cameras captured everything. Through it all, Emma continued her presentation to the remaining judges, calmly explaining how digital forensics could uncover complex financial crimes. She won first place. Later that night, after the FBI had taken our statements and the news vans had finally left, I found Emma sitting in our backyard treehouse, her thinking spot since she was little. "Jake asleep?" she asked as I climbed up. Finally, it took some explaining, But he understands Dad did something wrong with our money. I settled beside her. He's proud of his big sister for catching the bad guy. Emma leaned against me. Do you think Dad will go to jail? Probably. Agent Torres said the evidence is overwhelming. I stroked her hair. Are you okay with that? She was quiet for a long moment. Yesterday, I found Jake's hockey jersey in the trash. He said since he couldn't play anymore, he didn't want to look at it. She wiped her eyes. Dad didn't just steal money, Mom. He stole our trust. He stole Jake's hockey dreams. He stole our family. And you stole his freedom right back, I said softly. Using his own lessons against him, she managed a small laugh. Remember how he used to say knowledge is power? I don't think this is what he meant. No, Emma agreed. But it's what he taught me anyway. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. The FBI had frozen New Horizons assets. Our insurance money would be recovered. Hey, I showed Emma the message. Look what your science project accomplished. She smiled, a real smile this time. Does this mean Jake can play hockey again? As soon as the money's released, I hugged her close. You know, for someone who claims to hate sports, you sure fought hard for your brother's hockey. He's the only dad Jake has left, she said quietly. I couldn't let him lose something else too. In that moment, looking at my brilliant, fierce, compassionate daughter, I saw not just the child she was, but the remarkable woman she would become. Tom had underestimated her, seeing only a little girl who shared his love for computers. He'd forgotten that she also shared my sense of justice. And now, as his company crumbled and federal charges loomed, he had plenty of time to remember that the daughter he betrayed was exactly as smart as he'd always bragged she was. Just not in the way he'd expected. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom, watching Tom plead guilty to fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. Emma had insisted on being there, saying she needed to see it end. Jake stayed home with my sister, still struggling to understand how his hero had fallen so far. Veronica had turned state's evidence, revealing that New Horizon Energy Solutions was built entirely on stolen money. Not just ours, but from other families Tom had advised. The total approached $3 million. The defendant used his position of trust to systematically defraud multiple victims, the prosecutor stated, including his own children. I watched Tom's shoulders slump as the judge delivered his sentence. 8 years in federal prison, full restitution to all victims, and permanent revocation of his financial licenses. Dad looked old, Emma said as we left the courthouse. She'd been quiet throughout the proceedings, taking notes in the journal her therapist had suggested. Prison has a way of aging people, I replied, but she shook her head. No, I mean he looked old when he saw me, like he finally realized what he lost. The media was waiting outside. Emma's science fair project had gone viral, making her a minor celebrity in financial fraud detection circles. She'd even been invited to speak at a cybersecurity conference about youth in digital forensics. Emma, a reporter called out, how does it feel knowing your science project brought down a major financial fraud? Before I could intervene, Emma turned to the cameras. It feels sad, she said simply, because my dad taught me everything I used to catch him. He could have been great if he'd just been honest. The reporters fell silent, perhaps reminded that behind the sensational story was a 12-year-old girl who lost her father. That evening, as I was making dinner, I found Emma and Jake sitting together in our renovated study. The insurance money had been returned last month, allowing us to finally repair our lives. Jake was back on his hockey team, proudly wearing his jersey around the house. What are you two up to? I asked, noticing they were hunched over Emma's laptop. Emma's teaching me about computers, Jake said. She says I need to understand digital stuff so nobody can ever trick me with fake documents. Really? I raised an eyebrow at Emma. She shrugged. Knowledge is power, right? Besides, she glanced at the college brochures on her desk, already planning ahead at 12. Someone needs to keep an eye on things when I go to MIT. That's 6 years away. 5 years, 8 months, and 12 days, she corrected. But who's counting? Later that night, a letter arrived from Tom, his first since being imprisoned. Emma read it alone in her room while I waited anxiously downstairs. He apologized, she said finally, joining me on the couch. Said he was proud of me for being smarter and better than him. She handed me the letter. He wants to know if he'll visit. That's up to you and Jake, I said carefully. No pressure either way. She curled up next to me, suddenly looking very young. Can I tell you a secret? The night before the science fair, I almost deleted everything. I almost let him get away with it. What stopped you? I remembered something Papa used to say before he died, about how integrity means doing the right thing even when it hurts. She fingered the edge of the letter. It hurt exposing Dad, but it would have hurt more letting him think he could steal from us and get away with it. I looked at my daughter, this incredible mix of brilliance and compassion, strength and vulnerability. She'd lost her grandfather, then her father, but somehow emerged stronger. So I said, "What's your next science project going to be?" She grinned. "Actually, I'm developing a program to help other kids track suspicious financial activity. Agent Torres is helping me make it kid-friendly." Of course she was, because Emma had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the people we love let us down, but what matters is how we rise above it. "Mom," she asked sleepily, "do you think Dad will ever understand why I did it?" I thought about Tom, sitting in his prison cell, finally facing the consequences of his choices. "I think he already does, honey. That's why he's proud of you." She nodded, drifting off against my shoulder. On the coffee table, a letter from MIT's summer science program lay unopened. Tomorrow, she'd discover she'd been accepted, the youngest student ever admitted. But tonight, she was just my little girl who'd faced an impossible choice between protecting her father and protecting what was right. The last mourner had finally left, leaving me alone in the funeral home with nothing but flowers and sympathy cards. Michael's mahogany casket was still open, his face peaceful, as if he were just sleeping. The mortician had done an excellent job hiding the bruises from the car accident. Mrs. Anderson. I turned to find Amanda, Michael's secretary, hovering in the doorway. Her black dress was designer, probably worth more than my monthly salary as a high school teacher. But something was off. Her usual perfect posture was gone, replaced by nervous energy as she clutched her handbag. "Amanda, thank you for coming. And please call me Olivia." I managed a weak smile. "Michael always spoke so highly of you." A strange expression flickered across her face. "Did he?" Her knuckles went white around her back. "Olivia, I need to give you something, but not here." She glanced over her shoulder at the funeral director, who was pretending to arrange flowers while clearly eavesdropping. "Meet me at the Blue Door Cafe in an hour. Please, it's about Michael." Before I could respond, she was gone, her heels clicking rapidly down the hallway. I turned back to my husband's body, studying the face I'd woken up to every morning for 12 years. What secrets could Michael possibly have that would make his secretary so nervous? "Mrs. Anderson." The funeral director's voice was professionally sympathetic. "We need to close the casket now." I leaned down and kissed Michael's cold forehead one last time. "Goodbye, my love," I whispered, even as Amanda's strange behavior nagged at me. 50 minutes later, I sat in the Blue Door Cafe, still in my black funeral dress, waiting. The coffee in front of me had gone cold, untouched. My mind kept replaying the accident report: single car crash, late at night, brake failure. Michael had been alone, driving back from a business dinner. Amanda slid into the seat across from me, still clutching her bag like a lifeline. She'd been crying. "Before I give you this," she said, pulling out a thick manila envelope, "I need you to know something. Michael wasn't who you thought he was, who any of us thought he was." "What are you talking about?" She placed the envelope on the table but kept her hand on it. "Michael wasn't just my boss. He was my brother." The world tilted sideways. "That's impossible. Michael was an only child. His parents died when he was young, in a fire." That's the story he told everyone. The story our father made him tell. She finally released the envelope, pushing it toward me. "Everything you need to know is in here. Bank statements, photos, DNA test results, and a USB drive with video files you need to watch." My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The first thing I saw was a birth certificate for Amanda Mitchell, dated 28 years ago. Next was Michael's original birth certificate, not Michael Anderson, but Michael Mitchell, 35 years ago, same parents. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why would you lie about this? About you?" Amanda leaned forward, her voice dropping. "Because our father is Vincent Mitchell." The name hit me like a physical blow. Everyone knew Vincent Mitchell, the tech billionaire who disappeared 5 years ago after his company was exposed for illegal weapons dealing. The FBI was still looking for him. Michael helped the FBI build their case against our father. Amanda continued. He'd been gathering evidence for years, working undercover in the company. When everything went public, father disappeared. But not before he swore he'd destroy everyone who betrayed him. She swallowed hard. Michael was at the top of that list. The car accident, I said slowly. You don't think it was an accident? Look at the USB drive when you're alone. Michael knew they were coming for him. He left you everything you need, account numbers, safe houses, new identities. A tear slid down her cheek. He loved you so much, Olivia. But he knew that loving you put you in danger. Why are you telling me this now? Because they're watching me too. After the funeral, I'm disappearing. New name, new life. She stood up, straightening her dress. But first, I had to make sure you got this. Michael made me promise. Amanda, wait. That's not my real name anyway. She managed a sad smile. Goodbye, Olivia. Be careful who you trust. I sat there long after she left, staring at the envelope that had just shattered everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Finally, I pulled out my phone and Googled Vincent Mitchell. There he was, steel gray hair, cold eyes, sharp suit. Next to him, in an old company photo, stood a younger Michael before I knew him. He looked different somehow. Harder. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Sorry about your loss, Mrs. Anderson. Please accept our invitation to dinner tomorrow night. 8 p.m. La Maison Rouge. Your father-in-law sends his regards. My blood ran cold. Below the text was a photo, clearly taken less than an hour ago, of me entering this cafe. With trembling fingers, I shoved everything back into the envelope and dropped a 20 on the table. As I walked to my car, I noticed a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. The engine was running. I thought about our house, filled with sympathy casseroles and funeral flowers. About the life insurance papers I was supposed to file next week. About the simple story of the loving husband who died in a tragic accident. But Michael hadn't been simple, had he? He'd been a son trying to bring down his criminal father, a brother protecting his sister, and a husband keeping deadly secrets to save his wife. Now clutching an envelope full of truth and a phone with a deadly dinner invitation, I had a choice to make. I could play ignorant, go to the dinner, and pray they believed I knew nothing. Or I could run. As I started my car, another text came through. A black dress tomorrow night would be appropriate. After all, you're still in mourning. I looked in my rearview mirror. The SUV was pulling out behind me. Michael had spent our entire marriage protecting me from his father's world. Now that world was coming for me anyway. I turned left instead of right, away from our house and everything I knew. The SUV followed. It was time to find out exactly who my husband had been, and who I needed to become to survive. I drove for 3 hours, taking random turns, switching highways before I finally lost the black SUV. My hands hadn't stopped shaking since I left the cafe. Now, parked at a remote rest stop off I-95. I inserted the USB drive into my laptop with trembling fingers. A video file opened automatically. Michael's face filled the screen, recorded in what looked like his office. My heart clenched. He'd made this just 2 weeks ago. Olivia, my love. If you're watching this, then I'm dead, and Amanda kept her promise. He looked tired, with shadows under his eyes I hadn't noticed at home. Everything I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but you need to believe every word. I pressed my palm against the screen, touching his image as he continued. The accident you think killed me wasn't random. My father's people finally found me. I've been running from them for 15 years, ever since I first discovered what Mitchell Technologies really was, a front for weapons dealing, money laundering, and worse. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. I never told you the truth because knowing would have put you in danger. But now, you're in danger anyway. They'll come for you, trying to find what I left behind. The screen changed to show documents, bank statements, property deeds. I spent years building an escape route. There's $10 million in an offshore account. The routing numbers are in Amanda's envelope. There's also a house in Montreal under the name Sarah Collins. The deed and new identity papers are in a safe deposit box at First National Bank, Box 2317. The key is taped inside your grandmother's old recipe book, the one you never use. My mind raced. He'd thought of everything. But most importantly, his face returned to the screen, more serious now. There's proof. Everything the FBI needs to bring down my father's entire operation. It's hidden where no one would think to look, in plain sight at our wedding. I frowned. Our wedding. The video looks normal to everyone else. But embedded in the digital file are encrypted documents detailing every illegal transaction, every shell company, every murder ordered by Vincent Mitchell. The original file is in our wedding album. A car door slammed somewhere in the rest stop parking lot. I jumped, quickly minimizing the video. You need to get that video to FBI agent Sarah Martinez. Only her. She's been undercover in my father's organization for years. But be careful, half the agents supposedly investigating him are on his payroll. Another car door, footsteps crunching on gravel. One last thing, Olivia. That night we met at the bookstore. It wasn't accidental. I chose you because you seemed safely ordinary, a high school English teacher, no connection to my world. I thought I could love you and keep you separate from all this. His eyes filled with tears. But you became everything to me. Real. The only real thing in my life of lies. I'm so sorry for bringing this darkness to your door. Flashlight beams swept across my car windows. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. Ma'am? A police officer's face appeared at my window. Everything all right? I forced a smile, rolling down the window. Yes, officer. Just needed a break from driving. It's been a hard day. He noted my black dress, softened his tone. Sorry for your loss, but this isn't a safe place for a lady alone at night. There's a Holiday Inn 2 exits up. Thank you. I'll head there now. I waited until this petrol car disappeared before starting my engine. The Holiday Inn would be too obvious. Instead, I headed for my best friend Emma's house in the next town. I needed time to think, to plan. But Emma's driveway was already occupied when I arrived. A familiar black SUV sat there, its engine running. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Nice try losing us earlier. Emma says hello. She's being very cooperative. La Maison Rouge tomorrow night is no longer a request. They included a photo of Emma tied to a kitchen chair, terrified eyes staring at the camera. Another text followed. Don't bother calling the police. Officer Jenkins at the rest stop already reported your location to us. The world spun. How deep did Vincent Mitchell's influence go? How many people were watching me? My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Amanda. Don't trust anyone. Dead drop at location N3, 1 hour. Location N3. My mind raced through conversations with Michael, searching for meaning. Then I remembered. Our third date had been at Murphy's bar. We'd always joked it was where we really fell in love. 40 minutes later, I sat in Murphy's dimly lit parking lot, watching the streets for any sign of surveillance. At exactly 1 hour, a teenager on a bike rode past, dropping a backpack in the bushes before pedaling away. Inside the backpack, I found cash, a prepaid phone, and a note in Amanda's handwriting. They have people everywhere. Don't use credit cards. Don't go home. Find Martinez before they find you. Memory card with backup proof in Michael's mother's locket, the one you wore at your wedding. Good luck. The wedding album. The locket. All at our house, which was surely being watched. My phone buzzed one final time. Unknown number. Your friend Emma is quite pretty. It would be a shame if something happened to her face. 8 p.m. tomorrow. Wear the pearls Michael gave you for your anniversary. I looked again at Emma's terrified face in the photo. Then at Michael's paused video on my laptop. Then at Amanda's note. I had less than 24 hours to either walk into their trap at La Maison Rouge or find a way to rescue Emma, retrieve the wedding album and locket, locate a possibly compromised FBI agent, and expose a billionaire criminal's entire empire. And I was just an English teacher who, up until today, thought her biggest problem was grading term papers. I started the car, my mind made up. First, I needed supplies. Then, I needed a plan. And finally, I needed to become the kind of woman who could do impossible things. Because Michael had died protecting this evidence. He'd died trying to bring down evil men who thought money put them above the law. I couldn't let that death be for nothing. I'm sorry about tomorrow night, I whispered to my phone, staring at their threats. But I won't be wearing pearls. I'll be wearing vengeance. I pulled out of Murphy's parking lot, heading toward the storage facility where Michael had apparently rented a unit under a false name. According to Amanda's note, Inside, I would find everything I needed to become someone new. It was time to stop being the grieving widow and start being a woman my husband had trained me to be, without my knowledge. Every book he'd recommended, every self-defense class he'd encouraged, every coincidental lesson in lockpicking and computer security. He'd been preparing me for this moment all along. La Maison Rouge glittered against the night sky, its red neon sign reflecting off the rain-slicked streets. From my vantage point on the roof of the building opposite, I watched black SUVs arrive, men in expensive suits conducting security sweeps. Vincent Mitchell's people were thorough. I'd give them that. What they didn't know was that I'd arrived 3 hours earlier, disguised as a kitchen worker. The real employee was currently enjoying an all-expenses-paid spa day, courtesy of the cash from Michael's storage unit. More importantly, I'd already hidden 3 copies of the encrypted wedding video in strategic locations around the restaurant. My phone buzzed, the new prepaid one. A message from Agent Martinez. In position. Wait for my signal. The past 24 hours had been a crash course in my husband's other life. The storage unit had contained everything: weapons, disguises, multiple identities. But most valuable was a laptop with detailed files on every player in his father's organization, including which FBI agents were compromised. Finding Martinez had been surprisingly easy after that. She'd been posing as a cleaner in Vincent's office building for months. When I'd shown her Michael's video message, she'd immediately launch an operation. Now all I had to do was walk into a room full of killers and survive long enough for her team to move. My phone buzzed again. A picture of Emma, now with a split lip. 8-2. You're late. I took a deep breath and headed for the restaurant's front entrance. The maitre d' led me to a private dining room in the back. 4 men in suits stood around a table where Emma sat, trembling, and at the head of the table, looking exactly like his photos, but somehow more terrifying in person, sat Vincent Mitchell. Ah, my dear daughter-in-law. He smiled, gesturing to an empty chair. So kind of you to join us. Though I must say, those aren't the pearls I specified. I left them at home with my obedience, I reply, sitting down, along with any fear you think I should have of you. He laughed, but his eyes remained cold. Brave, just like Michael was before the brake lines in his car mysteriously failed. He sipped his wine. Now let's discuss what my son left behind. Let Emma go first. After you give me what I want. I pulled out a USB drive, a decoy containing nothing but corrupted files. Everything Michael had on you. Take it and let us walk away. Vincent examined the drive, then nodded to one of his men, who began connecting it to a laptop. I watched the seconds tick by on my watch. Any moment now. The fire alarm blared. Sprinklers activated, drenching everyone. In the confusion, I flipped the heavy table, sending Vincent sprawling. FBI agents burst through both doors, weapons drawn. FBI, everybody down. I grabbed Emma, pulling her behind an overturned chair as gunfire erupted. Through the chaos, I saw Vincent slipping toward a hidden door panel. Martinez, I shouted, pointing. The wall. But Vincent Mitchell had survived this long for a reason. He was through the door before agents could reach him. I started to follow, but Martinez grabbed my arm. We got what we needed, she said, holding up one of my hidden video copies. His whole organization is done. He's got nowhere to run. 2 hours later, I sat with Emma in an FBI safe house, watching the news. Raids were happening simultaneously across the city. Vincent's empire was crumbling in real time. I still can't believe Michael kept all this from you, Emma said, holding an ice pack to her lip. He kept it from me to protect me. I touched my wedding ring, and he made sure I had everything I needed to finish what he started. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from Amanda. Father's private jet just took off from a private airstrip. He got away. I shoved it to Martinez, who smiled grimly. For now. But his money's frozen, his people are arrested, and his organization is exposed. Vincent Mitchell just became the world's most wanted man. I thought of Michael's last words in his video. Remember what I always told you about your favorite Shakespeare plays, love? How revenge tragedies never end with just one act. He's out there somewhere, I said, watching more arrests on the news. And he'll try to rebuild. Martin has raised an eyebrow. You want to help us find him. I thought of Michael, of all his careful preparations, of how he trained me without my knowing. My husband had given his life to bring down an evil empire. The least I could do was make sure his father couldn't build it back up. When do we start? The news showed another raid, another arrest. Act 1 was over. But somewhere in the world, Vincent Mitchell was plotting Act 2. And this time, I'd be ready. I've attended countless graduation ceremonies over my 30 years as a high school teacher. But watching my son James receive his medical degree felt different. Pride swelled in my chest as he walked across the stage, and I thought about how far he'd come from the little boy who used to bandage his stuffed animals. My daughter-in-law Catherine sat beside me, her 7-month pregnant belly prominent under her designer dress. She was scrolling through her phone, barely glancing up as James accepted his diploma. I tried to ignore the sting of her disinterest, something I'd grown accustomed to over the past 2 years of their marriage. "Isn't this wonderful?" I whispered, touching her arm gently. She looked up briefly, offered a tight smile, and returned to her phone. Just confirming the catering for the party. The party. Catherine had insisted on hosting a lavish graduation celebration at their new house, overruling James's preference for a simple family dinner. "We need to make connections for his career," she'd argued. My son, ever the peacemaker, had agreed. I should have known something was wrong when Catherine positioned the bar next to the gift table. She'd been unusually interested in the seating arrangements, ensuring all of James' potential colleagues from a hospital were placed where they could see the main table clearly. The evening started pleasantly enough, their home filled with guests, medical professionals, former classmates, family friends. James beamed as he introduced his mentors to me, proudly telling them about my teaching career. Catherine hovered nearby, champagne glass in hand, steering conversations toward James's promising future in pediatric surgery. "Everyone, if I could have your attention." Catherine's voice cut through the party chatter. She stood at the main table, clinking her glass. My son looked up, confusion crossing his face. This wasn't the time we planned for speeches. "First, thank you all for celebrating James' achievement today." She smiled brilliantly at the crowd. "As many of you know, we're also expecting our first child in 2 months. A new chapter of our lives is beginning." The guests murmured appreciatively. I noticed Catherine's eyes fix on me with an unsettling gleam. "Speaking of new chapters," she continued, "I think it's time we address some family matters. You see, my dear mother-in-law here," she gestured toward me, "has been very interested in our baby's future, almost obsessively so." The room grew quiet. James started to stand, but Catherine placed a hand on his shoulder, keeping him seated. So I thought, why not make it interesting? "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm opening bids for my mother-in-law's role in our child's life." She raised her glass higher. "Starting price, just $10,000. Any takers?" A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the crowd. James's face reddened. "Catherine, what are you doing?" "Oh, come on, darling. Your mother's always talking about how priceless grandchildren are. Let's see how much she's willing to pay for the privilege." I sat frozen, my hands gripping my purse where I kept the envelope for months, waiting for the right moment. I'd hoped it wouldn't come to this. "Think about it," Catherine continued, her voice taking on a cruel edge. "For the right price, you get to be called grandma, attend birthday parties, maybe even babysit occasionally. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" "Catherine, stop this now," James demanded, standing despite her attempts to keep him seated. But she wasn't finished. "Of course, if the price isn't right, well, there are plenty of other potential grandmothers out there. Ones who understand boundaries. Ones who don't try to force their way into every decision about the baby." My hands trembled as I opened my purse. The envelope was worn from months of indecision, of wondering if I should reveal what I'd discovered. "I have a better idea," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Why don't we talk about what real family means, Catherine? Or should I say, Sarah Mitchell?" The champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. For the first time since I'd known her, Catherine's perfectly composed mask cracked. "What did you say?" she whispered. "You see," I stood, addressing the now completely silent room. "While Catherine's been so concerned about my role in her baby's life, she's been hiding something rather significant about her own." "Mom, what are you talking about?" James looked between us, confusion and concern warring on his face. I opened the envelope slowly, the papers inside heavy with the weight of truth. "I have your adoption records from Street Mary's Home for Children in Portland. They tell quite a story about a little girl named Sarah Mitchell, adopted at age 6 by the Prestons of Seattle. A girl who grew up to change her name to Catherine Preston at 18. Catherine's face had gone white. How did you find out? I finished for her. I'm a teacher, Catherine. I know how to research, but more importantly, I know what it's like to desperately want to belong to a family, to fear being rejected if people know your past. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in abandoned drinks. James had moved to Catherine's side, his hand on her arm, his expression a mixture of shock and concern. Why are you doing this? Catherine's voice cracked, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. I looked at my son, seeing the hurt and confusion in his eyes, then back at the woman who tried to auction off my relationship with my grandchild. Because family isn't something you can buy or sell, Catherine. It's not about blood or birth certificates or even names. It's about love, acceptance, and truth. I pulled out one more document from the envelope. And if you'd ever bothered to really talk to me, to share your fears instead of trying to push me away, you would have known something important. I held up the paper, my own adoption records from 1962. Mom? James's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, son. I was adopted too. And the day I found out about Catherine's past, I thought, finally I could connect with my daughter-in-law. Help her understand that being adopted doesn't make you any less worthy of love or family. Catherine swayed slightly, her hand protectively covering her pregnant belly. The party guests stood frozen, watching our family drama unfold like a slow-motion car crash. But this was only the beginning. As I looked at Catherine's shattered expression, I knew the real storm was yet to come. There was more in that envelope, much more, that would shake our family's foundation to its core. The silence in the room was deafening. Catherine's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the trembling of her lower lip, while James stood between us, looking like a man trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. There's more, I said softly, pulling out another document from the envelope. When I discovered Catherine's adoption records, I also found something else. Something that explains her intense reaction to my involvement in the baby's life. Catherine's hands gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white. Don't, she whispered. 5 years ago, I continued, there was another baby, wasn't there, Catherine? James's head snapped toward his wife. What? A little boy, I said, laying down a birth certificate, born at Sacred Heart Hospital in Phoenix, given up for adoption 3 days later. The glass someone dropped in the background barely registered as Catherine's legs gave out. James caught her, helping her into a chair. The party guests began quietly excusing themselves, sensing this was no longer a celebration but a family crisis. Catherine, James's voice was gentle but insistent. Is this true? She nodded, tears finally breaking through her perfect facade. I was 22, she whispered, still in college. The father was, it doesn't matter. I couldn't keep him. I couldn't be a mother then. But you could have told me, James said, pain evident in his voice. How? She laughed bitterly. When we met, you were this perfect man from this perfect family. How could I tell you I was not only adopted but had given up my own child? That I was damaged goods. I moved closer, pulling out another document. That's not why you've been trying to push me away, though, is it, Catherine? Her head shot up, eyes wide with panic. Please, don't. The real reason, I continued, my heart heavy, is because 6 months ago, that little boy's adoptive parents reached out to you. They want an open adoption. They want him to know his biological mother and his biological siblings. James sank into a chair beside Catherine. The remaining guests took this as their final cue to leave, quietly filing out until only our family remained in the aftermath of this explosion of secrets. You're pregnant now, I said softly. And suddenly there's this other child out there, a child who might want to know his brother or sister, a child who represents everything you've tried to forget. So you tried to control what you could, including my role in this new baby's life. Catherine buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. James reached for her, but she flinched away. I can't, she sobbed. I can't have him know. I can't have anyone know. Do you understand what this would do to my reputation, to James's career? Having an adopted child doesn't damage anyone's reputation, I said firmly. Neither does making a difficult choice when you were young. But trying to auction off family relationships, that might. James finally found his voice. Why did you trust me with this, Catherine? Did you think I would love you less? She looked up at him, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Everyone leaves," she whispered. "My birth parents left. My adopted parents died when I was 19. I gave away my baby. When I met you, I thought if I could just be perfect enough, create the perfect life, perfect family. But family isn't about perfection," I interrupted gently. "It's about acceptance, about standing together through the hard times." I pulled out one final document from my envelope, which is why I want to show you this. Catherine stared at the paper, confusion replacing fear on her face. "What is this?" "These are my adoption records," I explained. "Not just the certificate, but the full file, including information about my birth mother." I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. Her name was Margaret Mitchell. The color drained from Catherine's face. "Mitchell? But that's your birth mother's surname." "Yes. I did more digging, Catherine. Margaret Mitchell had two daughters, one in 1962, me, and another in 1979. Your birth mother. We're not just family by marriage. I'm your biological aunt." The sound that escaped Catherine was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. James stared between us, trying to process this new revelation. "All this time," Catherine whispered, "all this time I've been pushing away the only real family I had left." "Not the only family," I corrected her. "You have James. You have your baby on the way. And somewhere in Phoenix, there's a little boy who might want to know his remarkable mother someday." Catherine's hands went to her pregnant belly, protective and trembling. "I was so scared," she admitted. "When those adoptive parents reached out, all I could think was that everyone would know, that I'd lose everything I built, my perfect life would shatter." "Perfect isn't real," James said, finally taking her hand. "But this is real. All of it. The messy parts, the complicated parts, the parts that scare us. That's what family is." I reached across the table, laying my hand over theirs. "So what do you say we stop trying to auction off family members and start building something genuine? Something that has room for all our truths." Catherine looked at her husband, then at me, years of carefully constructed walls crumbling in her eyes. "I don't know how," she admitted. "We'll figure it out together," I promised. "Starting with cleaning up this party mess, ordering some pizza, and having a real conversation. No bids required." A ghost of a smile touched Catherine's lips. "I like that." As James went to find paper towels for the spilled champagne, I saw Catherine's hand drift to her phone, hovering over a contact labeled Phoenix Family. She caught me watching and quickly put the phone away. "One step at a time," I said gently. She nodded, then surprised me by standing and wrapping her arms around me in an awkward, belly-hindered hug. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." "I know," I replied, holding her close. "And Catherine? That little boy? When you're ready to talk about him, I'm here. After all, he's my family too." She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "How did you become so wise about all this?" I smiled, thinking of my own journey from adopted child to mother to teacher to grandmother to be. Let's just say I've had some practice with complicated family stories. As we began cleaning up the remnants of the failed party, I watched Catherine and James moving around each other, tentatively rebuilding their trust. The envelope of secrets lay empty on the table, its contents now in the open where they belonged. But I knew this wasn't the end of our story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter, one where secrets gave way to truth, where perfect facades crumbled to reveal something much more valuable. Real family in all its messy, complicated glory. 2 months later, I sat in the hospital waiting room, a small blue gift bag on my lap. Inside was a photo album, empty except for the first page, which held 2 pictures, my adoption papers and Catherine's. A new beginning for our family story. James paced the corridor while doctors attended to Catherine in the delivery room. The past 2 months had been a journey of healing and uncomfortable truths. Catherine had started therapy, working through her fears about motherhood and abandonment. She'd even taken the first tentative steps in corresponding with her son's adoptive family in Phoenix, exchanging emails and photos. "Mom,